The day began with the usual quiet hum of the savannah, an occasional rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the soft murmur of wind through the grasses. But that calm was shattered by an unexpected sound, a low, frantic cry that carried across the open plains. It wasn't the usual calls of the wild, nor the typical disturbances of nature. This cry was full of desperation, filled with fear, and unmistakably urgent. The man, already on patrol, paused, his senses immediately alert. Something was wrong. His heart quickened as the cry repeated, louder now, more insistent. Without thinking, he moved swiftly toward the sound, his steps quickening, driven by a sudden, raw urgency. The savannah stretched ahead, the golden grasses brushing against his legs, but the distant cry held him captive. It pierced the stillness, pulling him forward toward an unknown source of distress. His eyes scanned the horizon, moving through the thick grass. And then he saw it, a small form struggling in the distance. A baby elephant, its body sinking deeper into the thick, sticky mud of a shallow pit. The young animal's trunk flailed wildly, desperately trying to break free, but the more it struggled, the more it seemed to sink, its legs trapped in the muck. The baby's sides heaved with each strained breath, its large, dark eyes wide with panic and confusion. The sight stopped the man in his tracks. His heart sank as he assessed the situation. The mud was thick, deeper than it appeared, and with every movement, the young elephant's strength was rapidly fading. Alone, it would not escape. The scene felt both urgent and hopeless, and the man's breath caught in his chest. There was no sound now but the pitiful cries of the baby elephant, its distress cutting through the air. The surrounding area was unnervingly quiet, and as the man moved closer, he realized something else. There were no other elephants in sight. The baby elephant was trapped, completely alone. The savannah's silence seemed to reflect its isolation, a vast emptiness that pressed against the fragile form in the mud. The man's hands clenched involuntarily, fear mingled with determination. He knew time was running out. Each cry from the baby elephant echoed in his ears, sharp with raw fear, and it pulled him closer. The man approached cautiously, careful to make no sudden movements that might startle the animal further. His voice, though soft, was barely audible above the desperate sounds of the baby elephant. "It's okay, little one," he whispered, though he knew the words meant little in the vast silence of the savannah. The young elephant paused for a brief moment, its eyes locking with his, full of confusion. Then, with a cry, it resumed its frantic attempts to free itself. The mud clung stubbornly to its legs, each pull only seeming to make things worse. The man could see the exhaustion in its small frame. The mud wasn't just a physical trap, it was a test of will. The baby elephant was losing that fight. The man knelt beside it, his body low to the ground, trying not to startle the animal. The mud was thick, and each time the baby elephant shifted, its legs sank deeper, the mud pulling at its body like a heavy weight. His hands gently brushed against the young elephant's leg, feeling the strain in its muscles, the weight of its struggle. There was no time for hesitation. With the situation growing more dire, the man moved quickly, his actions deliberate and calm. He began to slowly pull the baby's legs free, careful not to cause further harm. Each tug was measured, firm but gentle. The baby elephant's cries softened slightly, but the fear still hung heavy in its voice. The man worked relentlessly, knowing that exhaustion was setting in. He had moments, just moments, before the animal's strength gave out entirely. Minutes seemed to stretch into hours as the man worked, but finally, with one last, careful movement, the baby elephant's legs were free. The man stepped back, giving it a moment to process the relief, to find its balance. The young elephant's body trembled, still weak, still shaken from the trauma, but it was free. Its legs wobbled as it struggled to rise, unsure of its own strength. A few tentative steps were taken, the baby's movements unsteady. The man stood still, his heart in his throat, watching the small elephant regain its footing. There was a brief moment of calm, the air heavy with the silence of the savannah. The baby elephant, though weak and exhausted, stood upright for the first time in what felt like ages. But as the young elephant took another step, it stumbled, its legs giving way. The man's heart clenched. The true challenge had only just begun. The baby was free of the mud, but it still needed to find its strength, still needed the rest of the herd. The world around them felt vast, and the man knew the baby elephant's journey was far from over. Yet, as the baby struggled to stand, there was a flicker of hope. The battle to survive had not been lost, and for now that was enough. The baby elephant, still struggling to regain its footing, was free from the mud but unsteady on its legs. Each movement seemed an effort, its small body trembling with exhaustion as it tried to steady itself. The man stood back, his gaze never leaving the young elephant. He could feel the weight of the moment, the uncertainty hanging in the air. He knew that his next move would be critical, but he also understood the importance of allowing the baby to find its balance on its own. The air around them seemed thick with tension, each sound amplified in the stillness, the distant rustling of grass, the faint calls of birds, the soft breath of the young elephant. The baby let out a quiet, plaintive call, its small form trembling with the weight of its ordeal. It was a sound of vulnerability, of exhaustion, but also of life. Life that was struggling, fighting to continue. But just as the man began to step forward to offer his assistance, the ground beneath him seemed to shift. A faint movement in the distance caught his eye. His body stilled instinctively, his gaze snapping to the horizon. At first, it was nothing more than a shadow against the golden backdrop of the savannah. But then, the shapes began to grow clearer, large figures emerging from the tall grass. The man held his breath, his heart beating faster as the herd began to emerge, their silhouettes cutting through the dimming light. The sight of them sent a surge of unexpected emotion through him. He had not anticipated their arrival, nor had he anticipated what would come next. The herd moved with purpose, each step synchronized, their large bodies moving as one. At the front was the leader, a large female, her presence commanding. Her eyes were fixed on the young one, locked in a quiet intensity as she moved ahead of the others. There was a pause in the air, a stillness that held everything in place. The man stood transfixed, watching as the elephants moved closer, their powerful forms drawing nearer. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, the tension in the air palpable as the herd closed the distance. When the first elephant reached the baby, the large female stopped in front of it. The baby froze, its body trembling again, unsure of what to expect. But instead of moving past it, the large female gently nudged the baby with her trunk. It was a soft, deliberate gesture, one that was both calming and protective. The baby elephant responded immediately, pressing its small face into the female's side, seeking comfort in the safety of the herd. The other elephants gathered around, forming a protective circle, their trunks touching the baby's body in a quiet display of solidarity. It was a moment of profound care, a silent exchange of protection and reassurance. The bond between the animals, unspoken but undeniable, filled the space between them. The man stood still, quietly observing, unsure of how to respond. He had feared that the baby elephant might be abandoned, left behind after its struggle. But the herd had arrived, not only finding the young one, but instinctively rushing to its side in a display of care and tenderness. It was as though the danger they had faced together had forged an even deeper bond between them. The herd's arrival, their reaction, had been completely unexpected. The rangers, too, paused, allowing the herd this moment, understanding that their intervention had played only a small part in what was unfolding before them. The herd had come to the rescue in their own way, not with human hands, but with instinct and a shared need to protect their own. The baby elephant, still weak and exhausted, stood supported by the herd. Its body, once trembling, now seemed to relax slightly in the presence of its family, the strength of the herd surrounding it. The rangers watched from a distance, feeling the raw emotion of the moment. The bond between these animals was tangible, built through unspoken understanding and shared history. It was a reminder of the deep, complex nature of life in the wild. A world where survival and care intertwine in ways humans can only begin to comprehend. The quiet calls of the herd, the low rumble of their communication seemed to resonate in the man's chest, a reminder of the primal, beautiful forces that govern the savannah. It was a moment of peace, a moment where the natural world had done what it does best, care for its own. The baby elephant stood now, its body still trembling, yet undeniably stronger, more grounded than it had been before. Its legs, though shaky, held firm beneath it, supported by the ever-present strength of the herd surrounding it. The large female, who had stayed close throughout, lowered her head gently, her trunk brushing against the baby's ear in a quiet gesture of reassurance. It was as if the herd, in its silent unity, was reaffirming its protective presence, offering comfort in the way only a mother's touch could. The baby, once frantic with fear and uncertainty, stood more at ease now. Its breathing was less labored, the tension in its body beginning to dissipate. It was no longer the fragile creature it had been moments ago, vulnerable and trembling. Now, it was part of something larger, something safe, encircled by the unwavering strength of the herd. The man, standing some distance away, watched with quiet reverence. He had come to intervene, to pull the baby from the mud, but now, as he observed the young elephant in the embrace of its kin, he felt like an outsider in a space where nature had already begun to heal. The herd's presence was not just a form of protection, it was part of a deeper rhythm, one that he could only witness and respect. In this moment, the healing was not just physical, it was the profound effect of the herd's unity, the comfort of knowing the baby was safe, surrounded by its family. The rangers, too, had stepped back, moving even more slowly now, their bodies still and quiet, careful not to disturb the delicate balance that had settled over the group. The baby elephant's body seemed to relax more with each passing second, its trust slowly returning in the presence of its herd. The young elephant's gaze shifted slightly, and for the first time it seemed to acknowledge the man. Its eyes, though tired, now carried a different look, perhaps curiosity, or a flicker of recognition. There was a stillness in the air, an unspoken question hanging between them. The man crouched down, lowering himself closer to the earth, instinctively mirroring the baby's position. His voice, soft and respectful, broke the silence, though it was more for himself than for the elephant. "You're okay," he whispered, the words meant to soothe the uncertainty that still lingered in his chest. At the sound of his voice, the baby elephant's ears flickered slightly, and its head tilted in response, as if considering the stranger who had come to its aid. The herd, calm and composed, did not react aggressively. They remained close, their watchful eyes fixed on the man, yet their stance was not one of threat. There was no tension in the air, only the quiet understanding of the shared moment. The man, despite the uncertainty that lingered, felt a shift in the atmosphere. There was a rare and fragile bond that had begun to form between him and the young elephant, something unspoken, yet profoundly felt. The baby no longer seemed afraid, its posture less defensive, its body language softening in the presence of the rangers. In this quiet exchange, there was no need for words, no grand gestures. It was a moment of trust, fragile yet real. The rangers, standing still, watched this delicate dance unfold before them, their breaths steady in the growing peace. They had helped, yes, but now they were witnessing something even more profound. The bond between the animal and the wild, the quiet trust that had bridged the gap between two worlds, was something they could not force, only observe in awe. The moment stretched, time seeming to slow as the quiet of the savannah deepened around them. There was no more tension in the air, no more urgency. The man stood up slowly, his gaze lingering on the baby elephant, still supported by the strength of the herd. The baby, no longer trembling in fear, rested against the protective wall of its kin. The silence between them now felt like a shared peace, a bond forged in the stillness of the savannah. As the herd began to move, their massive forms shifting in unison, the young elephant followed them, its movements more sure now, its body steadier with each step. The man watched them move, his heart full with the understanding that in the wild, help came in many forms. Sometimes it came from the very creatures we seek to protect, offering something deeper than aid, a quiet trust, a rare connection, a moment of peace that neither man nor animal could have anticipated. The herd moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their massive bodies weaving through the thick grasses of the savannah. The air was still, filled with the soft rhythm of their footsteps, as if the land itself acknowledged the quiet strength of the elephant's journey. The baby, once weak and unsure, now stood tall beside its mother, its small body brimming with newfound strength. Its steps were still hesitant, but they carried more confidence with each passing moment. The mother, ever watchful, moved alongside it, guiding her young with the patience only a mother could offer. The man, who had stood witness to the delicate dance of life and survival, stood quietly at the edge of the clearing, his heart full, but his movements slow and still. There was no need for words, none were necessary. The bond between the man and the elephants, forged in the quietest of moments, was now complete. The man watched as the herd continued to move, their forms growing smaller against the vastness of the plains. The baby elephant, once so fragile, now followed its family with steady, if not yet perfect, steps. It was a quiet triumph, a reminder of the resilience found in the wild, the strength that emerged from vulnerability. The mother turned her head back just once, her eyes meeting the man's with a soft, unspoken acknowledgement. It was a brief glance, but in it he felt the weight of everything that had passed, the quiet trust, the care, the shared understanding between them. It was not a gesture of gratitude, but of recognition, as if she understood that the man had helped her young one find its footing once again. The moment was fleeting, a thread woven into the fabric of time, but it held a power all its own. The herd continued their slow march forward, and the man remained standing still, watching them disappear into the tall grass. There was no dramatic farewell, no fanfare, just the quiet, steady movement of the elephants as they rejoined the wild, as they returned to the rhythm of their lives. The baby, though still small, was no longer the fragile creature it had been. It walked with its family, not as an outsider, but as part of something much larger, something that would continue beyond the man's presence. The herd, with its quiet strength and timeless rhythm, carried on, its movements blending into the vast expanse of the savannah. The man felt a deep, quiet fulfillment settle in his chest. It wasn't a victory, but something more delicate, a connection that could never be fully explained, only felt. His role in their journey had ended, but it had left an indelible mark on him. The savannah, with its endless horizon, seemed to stretch before him, infinite and full of quiet promises. He exhaled softly, feeling the weight of the land, the weight of life itself, all around him. As the last of the elephants faded into the distance, the wind stirred the grasses around him, a gentle reminder of the wild's enduring power. The man, still and reflective, knew that this moment, this quiet exchange, would stay with him forever. There were no words to express the bond that had been shared, no grand gestures to mark its significance. But in the stillness of the savannah, with the herd now gone, he felt a profound sense of peace. The baby elephant was no longer the fragile creature it had been, and the wild had, once again, reclaimed what was rightfully its own. The savannah, vast and untamed, continued its rhythm as the man walked away, quietly at peace with the life that would carry on.